Jerk here with Dynasty Owner, and we're going to jump into it. Today we're going to do our second installment of Free Agent Friday, talk about the NFC East. We're going to talk about a few less players than we did last week, but still going to be a good talk. So let's jump into some of the action. First thing I want to talk about, and I mentioned this in my article, is just the number of controversies that we had last week. We had the wild card weekend, so we had quite a few games played. Most controversy I've seen since that 2019 NFC championship game between the Saints and the Rams. Infamous game, obviously, where the no call and the pass interference happened, kind of changed some of the rules, at least for that single year, and then they kind of went back to the way they used to be. But first, we had that errant whistle at the Raiders-Bengals game. We watched that game. So a whistle was blown prior to a touchdown being scored. The touchdown was scored, but the whistle was blown looked like about half a second before the ball was caught. So by the rules, the play should not have stood. Anytime there's an errant whistle, blown dead, and they replayed it down. So it's kind of unprecedented the way the refs decided to allow that to stand. I don't think it affected the game so much. It was a mistake whistle, but by the rules, it should have been replayed. So second, we have the ending to the 49ers Cowboys game. That was quite surprising. Cowboys, I don't know exactly whose decision it was, probably a combination of these and Prescott's, but they decided to run the ball, QB draw with 14 seconds left and 0 timeouts. So I'm not going to dive too far into that, but I don't think I would have made that call if I would have been the coach or the quarterback. But either way, we had that, and then not really much of controversy, but the last thing I want to mention is that Arizona Cardinals just got destroyed by the LA Rams. So poor play calling. They just really looked outmatched. Rams are legitimate offense, legitimate defense. I look forward to watching this Rams-Bucks matchup on Sunday. It's going to be a good game, and I'll get back to you guys next week about how that game ended up and some of the takeaways from it. So today we're going to dive into the NFC East, and like I said, we have not as many free agents to talk about as we did last week. We had quite a few, I think up to 10. So we'll talk about all 4 teams in the NFC East right now. And first up, we're going to talk about the Cowboys. So the Cowboys have 3 notable players: Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz. They're all around the same age, between 25 and 26. All unrestricted free agents, which makes things a little bit cleaner, at least on our end, to try to predict where they're going to end up, what's going to happen. And first, let's talk about Wilson. So Cedric Wilson, he's the oldest of these 3 players, believe it or not. I don't really know who I would have thought, but I would have thought Gallup was a little bit older. But that's just because we probably haven't seen, or heard much of Wilson throughout his career so far. So he's filled in nicely over the second half of the season. So he filled in for Amari Cooper when he was on the COVID list for 2 games. Michael Gallup, he missed the second half of Week 17 and then Week 18, and then obviously he played in the playoffs as well. So I think he's going to get close to a $5 to $6 million range. I also think it's pretty likely the Cowboys are going to bring him back due to the cap hit. I think it's more likely that Wilson returns than Gallup, but we'll see. Speaking of Gallup, very disappointing and emotional ending to his season. So he tore his left ACL in Week 17, immediately ended the season, obviously. At first, maybe this was just me being optimistic, but it seemed like he was going to have a chance to return for the start of the 2022 season. It's not looking that way anymore. So as of 1/19/22, so it's about 2-3 days ago, Gallup has not had a knee surgery, and it's presumably because the inflammation is still, there from that initial injury. But anytime that gets delayed, it really hampers his chances of coming back for the beginning of that next season, especially since that injury happened so late. So I can't help but think that this injury is going to affect his salary somewhat. It shouldn't be a lot, just because I'm projecting that he's going to miss 4 games at most. But even still, there's little doubt in my mind that he's going to make over $8 million a year. Teams are likely going to be wary of offering that, especially on a long-term deal. Like 3-4. He's not going to get a 5-year deal, but 3 or 4 year deals. Big contract like that for a player who's not guaranteed to start the next season. That's tough for teams to do. So I'll keep monitoring that and let you know as it changes. But as of right now, he's going to make over $8 million. I think I have him pegged right at $12 million. So it might be a little bit much given his injury, but we'll see. And finally, Dalton Schultz, one of the 3 greatest values in Dynasty Owner last year. He finished as the tight end 3, with less than a $730,000 salary. So unfortunately for us, not unfortunately for him, he's on track to greatly increase that salary. So he's on track to receive Hunter Henry money. Hunter Henry signed 3 years, $37.5 million. So I don't think he's going to get the 3 years. He might, but I don't know if he's going to get that guaranteed money. I think he's going to get right around that $12 million range, though. Same type of money per year that Henry got. Up next, Eagles. Only one player to talk about, Boston Scott. Really not too much to say about him. So he's definitely not one of the biggest names this offseason, not one of the players I'm following the most, but he will be an interesting add for a team, especially one that's looking for a backup running back, backup receiving back, change of pace back. Boston Scott can do that. He showed that through his entire career so far that he's able to take on 70% of what that lead back was doing if they get hurt, say, or if they need to get a little bit of rest during the game. So my gut tells me Scott's going to re-sign with the Eagles. He already knows the system. It's only going to cost him $2 million, so it's not much to take on. And he's probably never going to become that number one back for Philly. I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody. But he's still worth rostering in dynasty owner leagues for that cheap salary. Washington football team. 2 players I want to talk about. First one is Ryan Fitzpatrick. So Fitzpatrick, I kind of struggled with what I was going to talk about with him just because there's so many different routes that his career could go at this point. I really don't know which one it's going to take. We haven't heard from him really much. So retirement's an option. Re-signing is another option, although I think that's probably pretty doubtful. Finding a new team as a starter is an option. I don't know if he's going to be a starter. He's probably not going to get starter money. But I think becoming a backup on a team is also on the table. It's probably the most likely. That and retirement are probably the 2 biggest options that I think he's going to be leaning towards. Like I said, I've yet to hear any news coming from him, so this is just all speculation. I think he should stay active in the league. He's 39, but that injury really took a toll. And that's the big reason I'm struggling. If he'd have not really played all season, but if he'd have stayed healthy all season, gotten benched, we're talking about a different story. But I just don't know with that hip injury. And either way, I don't think he's going to get a $10 million contract again. I think he'll probably get close to half that. It's really unprecedented, actually, though, for a quarterback, even a backup quarterback, to get a $5 million deal. We don't see many of those, really. You think of Andy Dalton, you think of Fitzpatrick. Last year, they were right around the $10 million range, so we don't really see those $5 million backup quarterback salaries too often. But recent injury history, like I said, 40-year-old, he's coming up on 40. It's going to make teams think twice before paying him $6 million per year. Much more interesting is the other player, his teammate, J.D. Mckissick. So Mckissick, he's 2 years removed from leading the entire NFL in running back targets. So that was 2020. He had 110 targets. So it's a little trivia question I threw in my article, and you can go to the article if you want to see the answer. I'm not going to read it on the video, but who do you think led all running backs in 2021 in terms of targets? So go to my article. You can find that right after I read off that question. Anyway, return to Mckissick. So he should easily see another contract in his career. Yes, he's 28. That's a little bit older than I thought he was. A lot of these players on this list are, I don't know, maybe it's just the way my mind was working, but it didn't really seem like he's 28. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he has relatively low wear in his body, very efficient with his opportunity in 2021. I expect a contract around $3.5 million for him. And finally, one player from the New York Giants. We have Evan Ingram. I just hate to say it, but it's been a disappointing season. It's been a disappointing career. And I hate using that negativity, but I just haven't seen out of Ingram what I thought we were going to. He's likely to make the same amount of money that he did last year. So he's right at $6 million. I project he'll get about that same thing. Just relatively poor performance, offensively, especially in the past 2 years. It's unlikely he's going to earn more than $8 million. I think the Giants have to move on from him, but it remains to be seen. It depends on their other options, if they like some younger tight ends or if they even approach that in the draft. So we'll see. That's pretty much it. Like I mentioned in my last video and article, I'm going to talk about every one of these players I mentioned at least one more time, probably twice more before, at least probably once more before free agency opens as we get some of the news coming in, but then definitely through the offseason after free agency. I'm going to talk about all these players, give you all the breaking news that comes out, so you won't miss anything. We're going to talk about all of these players at least a couple times before the season starts. I appreciate everybody listening, watching, reading, and I hope everybody enjoys the playoffs. So we'll see how that weekend ends up, and I'll be back here next Friday to talk about some more free agents.